Hey, Rob, licensed counselor here, and I wanted to take a minute today to talk about a topic that's come up with clients recently, and that is the phenomenon known as catastrophizing, or more properly, not a phenomenon, but a identified component of thinking errors that are identified in the practice of what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And catastrophizing is, as you can imagine, it's thinking about the worst case scenario of a situation. And so it begs, what's wrong with thinking about what the worst case scenario is? And the answer to that is there really is nothing wrong with that. In fact, that can be a very healthy thing. And that's something that I often would encourage clients with anxiety to do. Is I say, okay, you have a potential problem in front of you. So why don't you think about the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen? And let's talk about, if that worst thing does occur, what is your life going to look like? How are you going to be able to get through and be okay with that? And the objective there is to get the client to see that, you know what, even if the worst thing happens, it might be unpleasant, but I'm going to be okay. And that's essentially, those words, I'm going to be okay, can often, I describe as the key to mental health. The belief that no matter what happens, ultimately, I'm going to be okay. I may suffer emotionally, but I'm going to be okay. Catastrophizing is constructing the worst case scenario, then believing the worst case scenario is inevitable and probable, maybe even definite, and couple that with, I'm not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. And people very easily can get trapped into this cycle of projecting the worst case scenario, believing that's going to happen, and get into a panic and depression that would likely arise maybe if the thing actually happened, but it's all happening before anything happens at all. The catastrophe occurs in the mind. You project disaster, and more importantly than projecting disaster, you project your inability to cope with it. And that's what we call catastrophizing. So, if you find yourself doing this, what can you do about it? What can anyone do about it? The first step in these kinds of things, it's almost always recognition. It's, oh, okay, I'm doing that thing again where I'm, quote, catastrophizing. I'm believing the worst case scenario, and I believe that I'm not going to be okay. And I'm making mistakes in thinking. Number one mistake, I don't know that the worst case scenario is going to happen. And two, I have survived everything that's ever happened to me in my life because I'm still here. I'm okay. I am okay today despite similar disasters that have occurred in my life. So I have lots of evidence to believe that I'm going to be okay. I also have evidence to believe that things can hurt quite a bit, and you can go through some miserable times. But I've been through miserable times, and I've gotten to the other side. These things are true. The belief that creates catastrophizing are lies, right? It's a lie that to say that I know or believe the worst case scenario is going to happen is a lie. You don't know. And two, the second lie that you believe is that you're not going to be okay. So it is possible that the worst case scenario will happen. That's a true thing. It's a true statement. I am going to be okay even if it does happen is the second true statement. So there's another trick. I've had clients come and say, I hear you, I understand you, and I believe you, but when it's happening, I forget all that stuff. I just freak out. Okay, we need something to trigger a new way of thinking when you get into that fear. And usually with my clients, when I say when you get into that fear, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's introduce a physical element into this process that will change the chain of thinking that sends you down this rabbit hole. And those of you that follow me, I've mentioned this before for other things. Make a card, a business card, size card. You can use the back of anybody's business card and write something down, a phrase, a word, or even draw a picture that will remind you to stop and think about what are the lies that I'm believing now and what are the truths I'm going to replace them with. Whatever set of words or pictures reminds you to go through that fairly simple process, right? It's a simple process. Let's go over it again. It's inevitable. The worst case thing that's going to happen is a lie. We don't know what's going to happen. And two, and I'm not going to be okay, is lie number two. Truth number one is the worst case scenario could happen. It might happen. And two, even if it does happen, I eventually will be okay. That is the change in thought process that needs to happen in that moment. And if you can't remember to do it, and it's not your fault, it's common. You've been reacting this way maybe for years. It's automatic. It's part of your brain programming. We want to interrupt that process and we want to write a new program. And interjecting a physical element, the card, often will do the trick. So give that a try. See if that works if you are having problems with catastrophizing. Thanks for your time. I hope this helps.